media, happy Groundhog Day. And it's not, we in Pittsburgh call it Groundhog's Day because we add apostrophe S to everything. Kmart's, Walmart's, Giant Eagles.
An ad.
Yes. Groundhog's Day. Do we not?
Maybe where I'm from in more like Beaver County, we didn't, but
really
more proper Pittsburgh, I've heard those.
So you folks in Beaver County don't add the apostrophe S like my dad, every single word that could be made, and it's not plural, it's possessive. Every word that could be made possessive, my dad made it possessive. Going to Kmart's. Dad, the store is called Kmart.
This explains a lot, Todd.
So I'm going to call it Groundhog's Day.
We had a full dissertation, though, at one point on one of our programs about the apostrophe. Why a Veterans Day, right?
Right.
So what do we do in Pittsburgh? How do we call it Veterans Day? If it's
in Pittsburgh, we call it Veterans Day, but we call it veteran singular possessive. So apostrophe S, when really it's attributive. It's just an S. Veterans Day, a day for veterans. A veteran doesn't own the day. It is a day that we attribute to veterans. You got that, Larry?
Yeah, I think, can you repeat that again? What about March 29th? Is that apostrophe or plural?
That is no apostrophe. It's just plural. Yeah, Vietnam Veterans Day. It's just like Veterans
Vietnam
Day.
War. Vietnam War Veterans Day. I don't know why.
Oh, right. You're right. It is. Is it really? Is it Vietnam? Let's look this up. Let's look this up.
You got plenty of time.
We've got plenty of time here. You are absolutely right, Larry Googans.
Son of a gun. Yay.
Circle gets the score.
Can I have coffee now?
You are correct. It is, although most people call it Vietnam Veterans Day, the official term is National Vietnam War Veterans Day. And that's, I think, as it should be. Vietnam Veterans Day.
Solving riddles before 9 a.m.
Yeah, hey, I'm learning a lot.
National Vietnam War Veterans Day. And yeah, we're going to plan something that day. We have planned something, I should say, that day. It's just a matter of where we're going to have it. That's the issue.
We talked a lot, again, watch the time here. We talked a lot the other night about the NVA, and a lot mentioned the Viet Cong. I wonder how many people realize all the organizations, the NVA, the Viet Cong, the Pathet Lao.
Yep.
The what was one in Cambodia?
The Khmer Rouge.
Yeah, Khmer Rouge. And the others, and I can't remember anything. What were the indigenous people that were in Laos?
Montagnards.
Yeah, that's all very cool, I think.
Oh, it's
you got plenty of things to talk about, but
it's amazing to me.
Those organizations that were clandestine early on, all very cool, I think.
Oh,
yeah.
It's
you got plenty of things to talk about, but that's yeah. All right, I'm gonna mute out.
Okay, mute out.
I'm mute.
All right. Happy Groundhog's Day. Do we have a Groundhog's Day song? I guess there is no Groundhog's Day song.
No, not even like, the movie's so iconic, but there's not even a song that sort of bubbles up from that I could think of.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no, there's nothing. There should be. Why don't kindergartners learn a Groundhog Day song?
I didn't even know that. Did you learn it, Ellie?
Ellie, come on.
I got nothing.
Oh, come on.
You just have to make one up now.
Oh, Brad's PC. I see Brad is in there. We'll just let him in. Let's let everybody in.
Let's let everybody in.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Groundhog Day. As a Pittsburgher, I always like to put S's, apostrophe S's at the end of any noun that I can. So I call it Groundhog's Day. That's what we say here in Pittsburgh. Happy Groundhog's Day. My name is Todd. This is the Veterans Breakfast Club. This is our VBC happy hour that we have at every 9 a.m. Eastern here in our Zoom room. And today we have a special guest, a Marine, Somalia Operation Restore Hope veteran, Brad Graft. He's also an author of a trilogy that I want to dig in with him. Hello, Brad. How are you? I'm going to ask you to unmute, Brad, if you can.
Yeah, I'm a Zoom rookie.
You're a Zoom rookie.
Not
Good.
really.
Oh, well, we're going to, there's some hazing involved here. So we'll, Brad, thank you so much for joining us. Where are you joining us from? Where do you live?
I'm up in northern Michigan, a town called Traverse City.
Okay, Traverse City, Michigan. And Brad is a Marine. And now listen, and we have another Marine here named Brad too. I don't want any jokes about Marines and being writers, authors. All right. No funny business about that. Yes. How I won't, no crayon jokes either. No eating.
Yeah, crayon eating jokes.
Crayon eating jokes.
Right.
This is Brad. Seriously, I've been looking forward to this conversation because you are just one of the most interesting people I've read about. This is Brad Graft, Marine officer, Somalia, 1992-93, who then also business owner, who then decided that he was going to write about the Mamluks, something that I'm a historian, Brad. I don't know anything about the Mamluks, and I'm fascinated that you've written about them and written extensively about them. These are historically accurate medieval historical fiction novels, and there's a trilogy of them. We want to get to your story very soon, but first let's get some nonsense out of the way. Today is Groundhog Day, and I understand that most people around the country kind of are aware of this day. The movie, of course, the Bill Murray movie that came out probably 30 years ago, helped to put it on the, on the national vernacular. But here in Western Pennsylvania, it's a big deal because Punxsutawney Phil, which is where the Groundhog Day, Groundhog Day originated, I suppose, in the US as a folk holiday in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. And I live about 75 miles from Punxsutawney, a town of about 5,000 people. And what happens is thousands of people gather in Punxsutawney late at night, early morning of February 2nd. I understand there might be some drinking involved. And they await until 7:20 when they pull this poor, wonderful creature out of his bed, his hole, burrow. And then they have him either see his shadow or not see his shadow, and then they announce what the results are. Does anybody know what the results were this morning with Punxsutawney Phil? I do not. I'm asking.
I did not look it up this
You
morning.
probably saw his shadow because every year you see the shadow, it seems, because they put spotlights on him.
Yeah.
Oh, Mary knows. Mary's okay. Mary,
They said 6 more weeks of winter, so I'm not amused.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And the one in New Jersey died the other day, which I didn't even know there was a New Jersey hog.
Does that just mean that there's endless winter now?
Well, 2020 is still endless, so there you go.
Yeah, right. And my understanding is there are other groundhogs around the nation. I always thought Punxsutawney Phil was the only one, but there's a New Jersey groundhog. I don't know, Mary, if they recognize Groundhog's Day in Baltimore or not.
I want to say something so bad, but I will refrain.
Never heard one in Virginia, and I haven't heard one here in Texas, so I don't know.
Okay, so we're going to presume he did see his shadow, which means there are 6 more weeks of winter, and Groundhog's Day is the folk version of a church holiday called Candlemas. Ben Wright, we have Ben Wright here, a retired Anglican or Episcopal priest, also retired Air Force pilot. And Ben, could you tell us anything about Candlemas? It falls on February 2nd.
Well, the tradition came to bless candles, but it's the presentation of our Lord Jesus Christ. So 40 days after his birth, he was presented in the temple. There were two reasons. One, because the firstborn had to be dedicated to God because they belonged to him, because they had been spared in coming out of Egypt in the Exodus. And the second was known as purification of women, which eventually became women giving thanksgiving for having survived the potential traumas and the traumas of birth and the risks with that. And now in contemporary times, it's the blessing of the birth of a child or adoption of a child.
Okay.
But it's a significant thing. I mean, the most significant thing was what the Simeon, the priest, said in his blessing of the Christ child, and the prophetess Anna's declaration about who Jesus is.
So that is Candlemas, and Candlemas falls on every February 2nd, 40 days after Christmas, 40 days after
Right.
the attributed birth of Christ, and also I believe halfway between the winter solstice and the summer equinox. So it's it's this borderline between winter and spring. So it's had almost it's a magical time of year in a sense. It's a special time of year that is marked both in the church and then in folk custom like Groundhog Day. And there's even a couplet here: if Candlemas be fair and bright, come winter, have another flight. If Candlemas bring clouds and rain, go winter, come not again. So there's a whole tradition associated with Candlemas and predicting of the coming of spring. And, just as a historian, I love to explore these little tidbits and anniversaries. And I also want to acknowledge and thank our sponsor of our VBC coffee hour, D&D Auto Salvage and Metal Recycling, came aboard early on to sponsor the Scuttlebutt podcast, to put advertising in our wonderful magazine that we just sent to the printer yesterday. And we're very grateful to them. They are a local auto salvage yard here in the Pittsburgh area. They began in the late 1970s. They are full metal recycling salvage yard. They have 2 yards, one in Lawrenceville, one in Tarentum. And these are state-of-the-art scrap yards with deep roots in the community and a strong commitment to serving their customers. They accept all types of metal, both ferrous and non-ferrous. Somebody give me an example of non-ferrous type of metal, please.
Tin.
That would
Tin.
be aluminum.
Yeah,
Ferrous.
aluminum, tin.
Copper.
Okay, very good. Ferrous means iron, correct?
Yep.
Great.
That sounds like a good Jeopardy question.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Hey, Todd, I think it's so important. I think it's so important in the sustainability world that we do have companies like the salvage company D&D doing great things for our environment.
I agree. I totally agree. And the folks who own D&D Auto Salvage Metal Recycling also own Millerstown Pickup Parts, which is a salvage yard where you go in and you could extract parts for your own automobile. My dad loved doing that. You could bring in any tool you want except for a torch, right, Sean? I think at Millerstown. But we're very grateful to D&D Auto Salvage, and you could kind of learn more about their hours and what the process is for recycling metal at dndautosalvage.com. And we're also very happy and grateful that we have another great sponsor that just came on board, and that's Tobacco Free Adagio Health. They are a nonprofit that are committed to preventing and reducing tobacco use here in the United States, and especially here in Western Pennsylvania. And they do that by helping people quit. They have a quit line, PA free quit line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW. They educate people about tobacco use, all kinds of tobacco use, and they advocate for policies that protect the health of people where they live and where they work and where they play. And you can learn more at tobaccofree.adagiohealth.org. If you are a smoker and you want to quit, go there. They have a lot of wonderful resources that could help you. And they also have that great PA free quit line, which offers counseling. So, hey, I see we have Ken Kazak with us, and I want to introduce Ken. This is relevant to Brad. Ken Kazak I know you like Brad work, Brad Graft, and so you're busy and you have to get off and do things. I hope that you're able to stay a little bit for the conversation with Brad, Ken, because Ken Kazak is a writer, and Brad talks a lot about his writing process, and I think you'd find him fascinating. And I want you to jump into the conversation and ask Brad questions about his writing process. But first, I know that you have something you want to announce you have going on this weekend.
Well, coming up on Sunday, I started doing an event called Anatomy of a Movie, and I teach screenwriting. And if you're going to write a screenplay, which is the hardest thing to write, if you can master a screenplay, you can write anything. As I like to say, books, emails, love letters, coming up on Valentine's Day, right? Grand proposals, etc. But there's 26 different things you need to think about. And what Anatomy of a Movie does, it basically shows movie clips. And on this event, we're using clips from World War II movies and saying, look, this is what the writer had to think about, and this is how they presented it to us. And once again, this is the introduction to how I started to write. And if you don't mind me sharing, I have no qualms saying it now. I was broke, unemployed, depressed, angry at the world, and starting to like Iron City beer a little too much. And I took pen to paper, and I've seen the world. I was angry at the world once. Now I've seen the world. I've written 6 books. I have a successful investment practice, and I just try to share. People can take advantage of the cathartic aspects of writing and the ancillary benefits. And we're doing it through a unique virtual presentation called Anatomy of a Movie.
Wonderful. And that is coming up on Sunday at 11 a.m.
Yes, I'll tell you what, I'm going to write the email address in the chat here. And if anybody's interested, send me an email and we'll send you the brochure. Then we'll send you the Zoom link. And I really am interested in hearing about Brad's, history pre-writing and his writing experience as well. So I'll be on for the call.
Can I put the brochure here in the chat? And Ellie, if you want to share that on the Facebook side also, so people who are interested in Ken's program this weekend can join and get the information. Ken, will you, for a fee, write love letters for people?
So, here's an interesting thing. Arthur Haley, who wrote Roots, that's how he started. He was in the Navy. I think the Coast Guard, he wrote love letters for his fellow shipmates.
You are kidding me.
I remember. It's one of those things you hear once and you remember.
Oh, I want to hear more about that. That's good. That's a good story. I wonder if any of our vets ever did anything like Brad. Brad Graft, did you ever do that? Did you ever write like Cyrano de Bergerac, write letters for people?
Nothing worth mentioning or publishing, that's for sure.
Maybe a few limericks here and there.
Yeah, I was still eating crayons back then.
Hey, Brad, I'm only going to say this. We're going to get right to you, but I want to say hi to Julia Parsons, because Julia was a Navy. I know that you'll be interested in this, Brad, because you're a history guy. Julia was a Navy wave in World War II and a code breaker. She's turning 101 on March 2nd. And here she is on Zoom joining us. Hi, Julia.
There, am I in?
Yes, you are. You are in.
Okay.
So, Julia, your birthday is March 2nd, correct?
Right.
101 years old.
Yep. Never thought I'd make it.
That's a Wednesday morning. We have a Wednesday morning coffee hour. We're going to make it a birthday party for you. Is that okay? Yeah.
Well,
it sounds
good. Yes. I had such a good time at my last birthday party, so that must be a worthwhile thing to do.
It is a worthwhile thing to do. Yeah, we'll schedule some special stuff for you. But I just want to give you a heads up that that's what we're doing March 2nd for your 101st
Oh,
birthday.
thank you.
All right. Let's jump into Brad. I know that Ron Giunta, I want you to give us an update on the VA, and Larry Guggens, I want you to talk a little bit about the event that the VVA 862 has going on February 19th. But let's jump into this conversation with Brad. And Brad, I want to start right with your books. Brotherhood of the Mamelukes. Mamelukes. That's a name that rings a bell with me. But it's not something I knew historically. It was something I knew from the Marine Corps, right? That's the name of that Marine Corps sword.
Correct.
What is the origin of that sword, that ceremonial sword?
The origin is there was during Thomas Jefferson's foreign policy initiatives. He sent a detachment to Barbary Coast, where pirates along North Africa were having their way with American shipping, and he sent a former Army captain and a small Marine detachment. The Marine Corps is really, has their bullets of history that they'd like us to memorize. And the only thing that most Marines knew about the Mamluk sword was that Lieutenant Presley O'Bannon was awarded the Mamluk sword by a Middle Eastern sultan as a repayment for his good deeds there. There's a couple good books written about what actually went down. This is the early 1800s, and it's just fascinating history. For most Marines, the officers as young lieutenants, you only know two or three things about the Mamluk sword. One is, you're broke and you're forced to buy one, and they're about $500. And then you know that unless you are going to serve on the drill field, you're never going to pick the thing up again. So most of us have them hanging on the wall with no dents, no fingerprints on them. So that was, as far as the Marine Corps goes, that was our extent of our knowledge.
So this is a ceremonial sword for officers. Is there one for NCOs also?
NCOs have a different sword, but it's definitely the officer sword.
And the Marine Corps is the only branch of service that has a ceremonial sword, I think, right? Of this sort?
I don't know. I've seen Army officers
okay
here and there, but I don't.
It's not as big a deal, I don't think. Because you guys use it ceremonially, and of course to cut the cake on the Marine Corps birthday. So Brad Washaball, you have one of these swords, correct?
Yeah, I was putting a note in the chat. My sword is very special because it was made in England by Wilkinson Blade, which is pretty rare for an officer to have that type of sword. But my dad said, as I was commissioned, he said, no son of mine's going to have a sword made in Japan or Germany. It'll be made by the finest. And he commissioned Wilkinson Sword Company to make my Mamluk sword. And it is now a family heirloom that I treasure quite a bit.
Oh, that's so cool. What a great story. So Brad, were you a Marine Corps officer with one of these swords?
I was back in the 90s.
Tell me, what made you want to join the Marine Corps?
The honest answer is I was supposed to play some college football and had some neck surgery that prevented me from playing football. And I had just happened to go to Miami of Ohio, and they just happened to have a Navy ROTC program. And I was at the time just searching for a replacement, team environment. And there was a small Marine detachment within the Naval ROTC unit. I got along with, I joined the unit without a scholarship. I kind of earned my way into a 3.5-year scholarship. But down the road, my reasons became more noble once I realized what the whole program was. But I didn't, it wasn't like it was my dream all along. But I'm certainly, proud of serving in the Marines, and also, really happy that I was able to kind of almost stumble into the path.
You stumbled into it. You didn't have much of a family history with the Marine Corps or anything like that?
None. Yeah, my dad was an Army officer, but I never really talked about it. And it wasn't, I think it was, I think it was just a couple of years. I don't think he wasn't ever pushing it.
Right. Sean, do you have a question or a comment?
Sort of unrelated, more of a comment, but Brad, were you going to be at Miami of Ohio at the same time as Ben Roethlisberger? Because you might have played football with him had you.
I'm a lot older than him.
Yeah. I didn't want to age you, but I thought it might work out.
Although Ben's got some gray in his beard too, it looks like. But
and so that's where you first encountered the Mamluk sword here. And here's another picture of one cutting a Marine Corps birthday cake. But the Mamluks were these fascinating people. They were a warrior class, and I'm going to have you describe them in detail because they really are fascinating, and I think they're hard at first glance for Americans to grasp, because when we think of, they were slaves, and when we think of slavery, we think of chattel, bondage, racial slavery that existed in this country. This was, but there have been many different forms of slavery over the millennia and across the globe. And this was a very particular kind of slavery that elevated the survivors, those who were trained, to become military leaders of a special warrior class, correct?
Correct.
Tell us about them a little bit. Give us a historical outline.
Yeah, and I think that their stories varied over the ages. And I would probably consider myself really knowledgeable about the period between 1230 and 1270. But Mamluks had been around for a few hundred, for 150 years before that. And but essentially the story, and it is to me, it was incredible. Basically, in the 1230s, the Mongols were pushing, west across the Eurasian steppe into what's now Russia, in between the Black and Caspian Seas. And what they would do is either force the nomadic tribes, the one that I write about, it was the primary tribe in that area. It's called the Kipchaks, and they would the Mongol Khans would force the Kipchak leaders to either submit to the Mongols, and if they didn't, they would do what Mongols do during that time, and they would kill everyone. So the Mongols, when they came across, would allow the Kipchak tribes to join the Mongol forces, or if the Kipchaks resisted, they fought. But they would always save the women, often for slavery purposes, to sell them. And then, but the most precious stock, for lack of a better word, was this this 12 to 13, 14-year-old boys. And the reason being is they would push them down to the north coast of the Black Sea, and they would sell them to Middle Eastern sultans and princes. And it was a real elaborate trade. It was both shipping and they toss them on horseback, but they were by the hundreds, by the thousands. Middle Eastern princes would buy these boys from the Mongols, and they would train them up for 4 years, roughly, in citadels. The sultans, it was a sophisticated process where the sultans would basically separate these young boys from the rest of the population, so they wouldn't get poisoned by the local population's softness. These Kipchak boys had grown up on horseback. They were tough. They were great shots with the recurve bows that they grew up with. They were just, it was the whole concept of hard places create hard people. And these princes and the sultans of Egypt, places like across Syria, the Prince of Aleppo, Homs, Hama, all these places, they all had their elite cavalry forces, were all these Mamluk lads. And what would happen is the qualifications to become a Mamluk was you had to be born on the steppe, which guaranteed you being hard, and two, you had to become enslaved. And the slavery part, which it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, us being Americans and everything that's associated with slavery in this country. But what happened was these Kipchak lads were only slaves for 2, 3, 4 years, depending on how long they were trained for. But once they finished their training, and they were essentially theoretically freed, given the opportunity to leave, but none of them did. There was a sense of, for one, there's probably a whole psychological element where they felt completely obligated to this prince. A lot of them didn't have parents anymore. Either they were killed or they were hundreds and hundreds of miles away. And two, they knew the opportunities of being a Mamluk, and it's so they basically go in one day from being a slave to becoming royalty. They're paid well. They have the best gear. They're the elite of all the Middle Eastern forces during the 13th century.
And we don't know much. I say we, I think I mean me. I don't know much about the Mongol Empire. I do know that it's the largest empire in history. I think this GIF, I hope you're seeing how it's unfolding over the years. It shows the growth of the empire. Largest geographically, largest geographic empire in history. And you can see how it reaches a kind of pinnacle before the end of the 13th century. And it's that kind of critical period as the Mongol Empire is invading the Levant here, where what we call the present day Middle East, I suppose. That's the period that you focus on, and the role of these Mamluk warriors in fighting off the Mongol invasion there, correct?
Correct. And that's what captivated me. It was like, I was like, wait a second. So the Mongols captured these young boys, sold them to Middle Eastern princes. Yeah. And then 25 years down the road, they have to go down, the Mongols go down the Middle East, and they're forced to fight these fellows that they sold, that they enslaved. And it's like the ultimate underdog story, in my opinion. So, I mean, if you had to categorize these books, I mean, that the first book, Chains of Nobility, basically sort of shows, historically shows the process of how these Mamluks were made and where they came from. Right. The second book basically covers the Seventh Crusade and the Mamluks' participation in that crusade, and also the start of the Mamluk Sultanate itself, where their father figure, a prince who became the Sultan of Egypt, his name was Al-Salih. He dies, and it's like a bunch of extremely loyal sons lose their father figure, and the heir apparent, the only son that Al-Salih had living was militarily and even ethically just wasn't a good guy, and these Mamluks were like, we can do better ourselves. We run. They were running administratively, running the empire. They were running the empire, the entire military. So they're like, hey, it was a messy process, and this is now we're into the year 1250. So between 1250 and 1260, it's quite messy. But they eventually stopped the Mongols. Third book, they're stopping the Mongols in what's now Israel.
And that meant, I mean, the consequences of that battle, which was, I believe, in 1260.
Right.
Are far-reaching, because that means that what we call the Middle East today continues to be Islamic, right? Muslim.
Right. And some of the Mongols, a couple of the Mongol Khans were Muslims. The Mongol Khan that was in charge of you've got it right there. Basically, the Mongol Khan that was in charge of the Middle Eastern campaign, he was a Nestorian Christian. His mother and his wife were Nestorian Christians. So the concept of jihad was pretty relevant, where the Mamluk Sultan, his battle cry was, this is jihad in its greatest form. So, but the Mongol forces were they were coming. There was 100,000 Mongols that had already sacked Baghdad, and they just ran into some trouble once they started getting south of Damascus, where the grass that fed their ponies was a little bit thin.
Mm-hmm. Boy, so these are massive battles taking place in the present day Middle East, and the culminating battle is the Battle of Angelut,
right,
in 1260. And here's a depiction of the battle, so you can get a visual sense of what it was like. And this, I take it, is the culminating event of your third book in the trilogy.
It is.
It is. What a fascinating history to dig into. And I think we have I know Ryan All, it was Army veteran, served in Iraq. I'm trying to see if who else here served in Iraq. Just I think when those wars were going on, and even today, we don't know much about the history that took place there. What drew you to this history? I mean, this is an arcane field of historical study. What drew you in?
I'd always been obsessed with the steppe cultures of our Plains Indians. So I just love that. I had already dug fairly deep into our Indians, and so when I learned, I just had no idea about this Eurasian steppe culture, these Kipchaks, and the crazy thing is, the Russians did a pretty good job of erasing that culture. It's not, and nobody, I like if I'm in a city, I'll come across a Ukrainian taxi driver, and I'll ask him, what do you know about the Kipchaks? Their other name is called Cumans, and I've only had one Russian ever really know who they were, and so it's like you said, it's just this obscure piece of history, this obscure group of people that nobody knows about that just played a huge role in history.
And a steppe is a geological or geographical feature that exists around the world. We here in the US call it a prairie maybe, or plains, but they're level, grand, treeless landscapes, semi-arid, not quite desert. And it extends just from here, from Eastern Europe, all the way to the Chinese border, where this blue area is shaded. And so you said before, a hard landscape creates hard people. So is this a landscape where the living is hard? The living is tough, and the people who survive in these pretty desolate landscapes end up being tough people.
That's right. I'm sorry, Todd.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, the interesting thing is the Mamluks, and I should have mentioned it earlier. The Mamluks, it was a one generation aristocracy. The process was really well thought out by these princes. They knew that by the time a Mamluk had a son, the son was going to grow up and get soft like the rest of the Middle Eastern populace in these cities. And soft is all relative. I'm sure it was still hard living in Aleppo in 1230. Right. But compared to where they came from, the princes would literally lock these guys away in citadels with tall walls, just purposely to keep them away from getting. They didn't want them to. The princes didn't want them to marry the locals. He would this Al Salih would bring in Kipchak women by the cartloads and marry them to his Mamluks, just so that his soldiers wouldn't be exposed to the merchant class and become sullied in any way. It's pretty incredible.
Absolutely incredible. It's a special warrior class that is truly merit-based, not inheritable nobility titles. And here's another map of that steppe region in green here. I think this is a little easier to see. And you can see your people, the Kipchak, they're here.
Exactly. Yeah. Nice job on all these graphics, by the way. Wow.
So they're right in Ukraine, which is, I don't know if you've read in the news today.
Oh, yeah.
And part of what makes these people warriors so special is this steppe area is really hard to defend. There are no natural boundaries to keep your invaders out. So you have to be swift and mobile and lethal. I'm going to ask you a question here now. How did your Marine Corps training help prepare you to write about these remarkable people?
I'm sure deep down, just the warrior ethos. I mean, I think I've become a friend and a huge fan of Steve Pressfield. And I think one of his quotes is, wars change, but warriors don't. So a lot of just a lot, just everything I learned in the Marine Corps. And it was such a great experience. I was able to apply.
Let's please, anybody who's here in the Zoom room, ask Brad a question. I'm me, I'll gab all day. But I know Ryan All, Army veteran, finds this an interesting subject. Don Nemchek, you put in the chat, where was the guest able to find data about so long ago? That's a great question. Where did you do your research?
I started with just a couple books. There was a professor that wrote a book called The Knights of Islam, and that's where I became obsessed, essentially. And so I went into his biography and started finding scholastic publications written by doctorate level stuff. There was a professor out of Jerusalem. His last name is, and I'll butcher the pronunciation. It's Ayalon. And I think he dedicated his entire career to studying these Mamluks. And the challenge wasn't so much the level of the writing. That the challenge was finding someone that put it in English. So there was plenty written, in Arabic, but trying to find these Muslim war manuals that were written in English, just not many of them. So I really became appreciative of these, especially of this Dr. Ayalon that wrote, three full books on these Mamluks, especially during the period of the from 1250 onward.
So, I mean, it's one thing though. Oh, Brad Washabach. Yeah, I see your hand is up.
This question, thanks, Todd. This question for Brad. I'm a career infantry officer, 29 years. But I was intrigued by your comments about the cultivation of the warrior spirit by this very specialized group. And I'm trying to look towards today and how our armed forces cultivate and retain, sustain a warrior culture and still can be integrated and subordinate to a civilian population, because it seems like the warrior culture is paramount to warfighting effectiveness. But there's all kinds of pressures from outside and perhaps inside to change. And how do we retain a warrior spirit and be an effective fighting force? Drawing on some of the lessons in the research that you have done, what takeaways are there for today's armed forces and our warrior cultures, especially in the Marine Corps? You know how we're trained and raised and constantly think about war fighting in this regard. But to those that aren't in the warrior arena, there is also a lot of misperceptions, misunderstandings, and fear, and a lot of things that go with that. So, this is a very interesting subject, and I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts, because I know as a Marine officer, you must worry about things and be concerned about things also. Thank you.
Yeah, those are great. That's a great question and great points. Yeah, I'm worried. I mean, the challenge in a democratic society is, we can't throw the entire Marine Corps behind black walls and make sure, have them marry wives of hardy shield maidens. So we're in a bad. I know, compared to the situation they had, we've got the challenges cut out for us. And yeah, I don't have a good answer. To me, it's always about keeping the standards up, and the stakes are so high that we just can't compromise. And it's just so much more difficult in our society compared to back then.
It's so difficult, Brad. I think the mere fact of you stating the problem as you did, it was eye-opening to me. I don't think I've ever quite understood the problem in the terms that you stated, but I do think it's a problem. The warrior archetype is universal and it's real. The warrior archetype is real and it's very powerful. It's very powerful. And we don't, I think our culture, we don't have a way of integrating that archetype into our larger democratic culture. If we had a way, maybe we've lost it. And I think and there are other archetypes that we need to integrate, I think, into our culture, but that's a really important one. And I think it contributes, the fact that we don't integrate it well, contributes to the sense of alienation that veterans have, especially young veterans, and the distance they feel from the civilian world, and why things like the Veterans Breakfast Club exists, to bring veterans and the public. I should let Brad Graft know that I'm not a veteran. So I really know very little about serving in the armed forces. Everything I've learned from these folks here. So I think it's that forums like this, where people, non-veterans, can hear the stories from warriors. All right, Ryan, please save me here as I'm mumbling.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, really interesting topic. And I haven't read your books, Brad, but I'm probably going to go order them now so I can read them. So a little bit on that, topic of, archetypes, but when you're writing these, like, where do you draw your inspiration from for the characters in there, and then develop them? Like, what, did you draw any inspiration, or how did that process work for you?
Yeah, I tried to read a bunch about just how to write fiction. I was, I wasn't technically trained. I'm just a regular business guy. I knew from what I read that I couldn't just have a Marine buddy become a character in the book. That would be a mistake, because then you want the character to be able to go where he wants to go, and to have his or her own identity. But if I had to, and this will probably surprise you to some degree, but the characters, there's a character, his name is Singer. There's another character, Duyal, and his brother, they're Turkish names. His brother's Gazdi. But long story short, the people I pictured, or the inspiration I had for these main characters were not Marines. What they were was they're my friends from New Zealand, if you can believe it. The Kiwi culture is in its own way similar to these Kipchaks. The Kiwi guys I met, and I feel so blessed to have met them, are these hardcore hunter and fishermen. My buddy, Singer, the character, my buddy's name is Dave Singer, and he used to hang on the edge of helicopters, and he worked for the government, taking out domestic goats that had gotten into the hinterlands of New Zealand, up in this jungle area. He would jump on the back of goats, put radio collars on them. They called him the Judas Goat, and he would then set up a base camp with another dude, and they would for 2 weeks would take out goats with little snub-nosed 223s. The skill these guys had shooting, I didn't feel myself even capable to be around them. I couldn't hump a pack with them. I thought I was pretty good with a pack. I could not. The terrain was so difficult to get around, both high alpine country and jungle stuff. These guys can move through it so fast. The only thing I could provide to them was some technical fly fishing skills, and taught them how to fly fish basically. But short of that, I was useless to them. I was a liability. So these characters, I just kept picturing. These are the guys I kept picturing, and it's the same deal. Hard places create hard men, and I hate to say this, but these especially these two chaps are way more talented. They never served in the military, but oh man, they're more talented with weapons and ambushes and everything else than any Marine I ever met. So
amazing. I love it. And I'm going to share another picture here of a steppe. I think I am. Here's a good one, Ukrainian steppe, just to give you a sense of, very much looks like, the Midwest, the US Midwest. But it creates a hard people. Do we have, is that Rob Lofthouse? Rob, are you with us here? No? Yeah, that you are. Okay. Rob, thank you so much for introducing me to Brad and his work. This is Rob Lofthouse, another author, Honor Through Sacrifice. Rob was on our program. Thank you very much, Rob. I don't want the morning to end without saying thank you for making this introduction.
Thank you. I'm glad you put this together. Gave me an opportunity to meet Brad.
A fellow Marine.
Yes, sir.
I mean, that the Marine Corps instills that kind of warrior ethic and warrior culture. Brad, I do want to ask you about your own service. I guess one of the remarkable features of your service was your role in Operation Restore Hope that ran from December 1992 through 1993 in Somalia, this small country on the east coast of Africa, Horn of Africa on the Indian Ocean. When did you arrive in Mogadishu?
Right in the beginning of December of 92. So
you were one of those first.
Well, I wasn't the guy on the beach, but we all, a lot of us arrived in mass with commercial airlines.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Commercial airlines in Mogadishu airport.
Right.
Wow. Was this your first? I mean, this was a humanitarian mission that turned into a combat mission. But what was your impression? I mean, what were your first thoughts when you landed?
It was, and I think a lot of the folks that are listening are salty war dogs, and I really don't pretend to be honest with you. I think our thoughts all along were, is this a war operation, or are we, we're doing stuff to help people, but oh my, everywhere you look, just waiting to get ambushed, waiting to get shot. So it was, my impression there was, it made me appreciate America, just like most of these guys would say the same. Just seeing a country that had been torn apart by tribal warfare, and it was sad. It was just sad. So we just did the job we had to do. We cleared mines, and we did a bunch of ordnance disposal, and we built a hospital with hand tools at an orphanage outside of Mogadishu. So we did a variety of things, but yeah, we did what we had to do.
Somalia by that point it was a stateless country. It was a country that was, as you said, being ripped apart by inter-ethnic group warfare. Any kind of coherent state had fallen apart, and there was hunger. There was a lot of violence. It has never quite recovered from that era. I mean, it's been 30 years of pain and suffering in Somalia. I don't know. I guess my question. Okay, let me put it this way. Jeff, yeah, save me, Jeff.
I was going to ask Brad. I watched, and you came into the airport, okay, and I knew the Rangers that went into Mogadishu also, and I was going to ask you questions about that also. But the thing that was really bizarre to me was when I was watching the news, and you were talking about the difference between a humanitarian type mission and a tactical mission. And when I saw the Marines land on the beach, and it was like landing in Miami, it looked like on the news. When I'm seeing an dark 30 and these guys are coming into the beach, and there's all the reporters there, and I says, what the heck is this? Who put the word out on this one? It seemed like a real press briefing or something like this, but it just seemed odd. I mean, it was just an odd, thing to watch.
It was odd. Yeah, we had to clear like a couple 100 miles of mines from roads, and we didn't. It was a fast clearing mission. We weren't doing it by the book. And when we got to the end of the road, there were the reporters, the guys with the TV cameras. We were like, what the hell? And so we talked to some of the locals. They're like, yeah, we knew you were coming, and we took out the mines as you were rolling. And if you had been French, we would have left them in the road. And we were just like, oh. So that's just. You guys could tell a million better stories, I'm sure.
Jeff, I so remember that too. I so remember December 1992.
Yeah.
Crowds of media in Mogadishu greeting these Marines.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, what's going on here? And I remember getting in an argument with my aunt who thought, who said these guys shouldn't be there. This is going to be a quagmire. You know, why are we sending our boys there? And me thinking, you know, I was idealistic younger person thinking, you know, well, there's starvation there. This is a humanitarian mission. Do you have any reflection on this, Brad? I mean, I just get a sense your Marines are put in a tough position like this all the time, where they're on a humanitarian mission, but then they start to fight and you don't know who the enemy is. And
yeah, the honest answer, and I guess I have no choice but to give you the honest answer. Maybe the frustrating thing was the missions were coming, oddly enough, from CARE and UNICEF, which I know are good organizations that have done plenty of good work for decades. But maybe the frustrating thing was we were clearing mines for grain trucks. We were clearing mines from the roads so grain trucks could follow in behind us. And the problem was we'd get to where these villages of starving people were supposed to be, and there'd be nobody there. And that was fine the first time or two, but after a while, you know, the Marines don't mind risking their lives, but it wasn't cool to show up and to see no starving people. And we, you know, my Marines were more than willing to help anybody. It's just wasn't a very good situation, to be honest with you.
What was your role? Were you a platoon leader?
I had a reinforced platoon, so I had almost like a small company.
Like a small company. And was that your first experience of, you know, leading in a tactical situation?
It was.
Any lessons you could learn?
Yeah, I mean, the honest truth is, and this won't surprise anybody. Yeah, I mean, there was, you know, I had my little book on how to clear mines from the roads and teams and so on. And when it came to actually doing it, my sergeant comes up to me and he's like, "Sir, we already got a plan. And what we're going to do is anybody that has, we don't care about rank, anybody that's got kids, they're not clearing mines. Anybody that's married, they're next in line that aren't clearing mines." And so what I learned is me and a few Lance Corporals were going to clear the mines because you know, we were expendable.
Oh my. Jeff.
Brad, I was going to ask you a question relative to the Rangers. Did you guys complement each other in your missions with the Rangers, or are they just separate operations as part of the overall operation?
Yeah, they sent us out. We were out in the kind of the hinterlands most of the time. There's a town called Baidoa that's due west of Mogadishu, and a town called Bardera that's even further southwest of Baidoa. They're all about 2 hours apart, or 120 miles apart. And there's Bardera there. We spent our time right there, a lot of time right there doing most of the mine clearing. And we didn't come across any Army Rangers. We came across Army support folk like welders and things like that. But for the most part, yeah, there were so many people spread everywhere, so many units spread everywhere that I didn't come across any Army Rangers.
How long were you there, Brad?
I think we left late February.
Okay.
So it wasn't that long.
3 months or so.
Right.
How did it change you, that experience?
Yeah, I would say these are tough questions. I appreciate you asking them. Actually, I don't talk to anybody about this stuff, which I'm sure all 20 folks here would say the same. I think it changed me. I lost a little faith in humankind. I couldn't believe that these tribal leaders would expose their people to starvation and to just kill people, and you could just feel they had no compared to Americans, just didn't have much respect for human life. That's what I came home a little bit. Just a reality check. It was naive 24-year-old and came home seeing the evil ways of the world and just really fortunate, just so lucky that I didn't get anybody blown up.
Brad, you know that's why we ask you these kind of questions. I've heard that transformation. I know, Sean, you have a question, but I just want to say that what I found in talking to veterans, ones who have experienced war, not even necessarily combat, but have gotten close to war, they've been exposed to a side of humanity they didn't understand existed before. And they have to carry that knowledge with them. And people like me don't really want to hear it. You know, we don't have a place where we could share this kind of, because this is knowledge. This isn't just you being traumatized by it. This is knowledge that you have about what human beings are capable of. And we need to be reminded of this knowledge. And I'm grateful to you for being willing to come and to share some painful, painful understandings of the world. Share them with us. Sean?
Along those same lines, we talk a lot here about, with writers especially, about how their writing helped them heal from the trauma of war or seeing war. And how do you think that sort of losing that faith in humanity kind of appears in your trilogy, and how you sort of work through that in your writing?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's I would just say medieval times. I mean, you just start reading the facts of how many people were just killed. There's folks listening that were in Iraq and Baghdad. The Mongols came into Baghdad, and I think they killed 200,000 people. So war, I'm not a war dog. I'm just, I don't pretend to be. I pretend to be way less than most of these people that are listening, as far as what they've been through, for sure. So I'm not sure I'm really answering your question. I just knew the medieval. If it was rough going in Africa, I know medieval times were much rougher. They had no problem. Mongols had no problem killing women and children. They did it
back then. I'm sure it was quite different, a sense of humanity. Sort of tribal and Mongols were moving through and brutalizing. There wasn't much sense of humanity coming from them.
Yeah, the one thing that even I visited Mongolia as well as part of the research for this book, and there's even still there's a vibe there that they had. The goal, Genghis Khan's goal was world domination. He united the tribes, and he did a terrible job of succession planning, but he laid out the mission, and he sure set him on the path to give him the capabilities to continue dominating the entire continent. And yeah, I just think they kind of feel like if it hadn't been for the grandkids of Genghis Khan, the infighting, that they'd still be ruling the world.
They might have made it. Kubla. Was Kubla Khan one of his grandchildren?
He was.
Yes.
He was.
Jeff Witherall.
The comment I was going to ask you, Brad, was a question on your preparation for the mission. I guess you were read on with the estimate of the situation and things like this, but how much did you and your Marines, get into the culture, the understanding of the country, the people, what you could expect when you got there? How much was that, put out to you?
Almost none. I mean, the officers got briefed, a battalion brief for maybe a couple hours. Yeah, we showed up not knowing anything, to be honest with you. We never had real maps.
Yeah, I was gonna make a follow on to that, Brad, because it fell right into my attitude about, studying your enemy. And I think we do a very poor job of that. I even asked my dad when he went against the Japanese, I said, did you know anything about the Japanese? Because I read all kind of things about the Japanese and the Germans. And he said, no, he said, we were just going over to the fight. I says, you didn't understand the Bushido philosophy and all this kind of stuff, die for the emperor. You didn't understand these guys. I said, didn't you understand that they're going to attack you first? Their surprise attack was always in their culture. I said, that's the Japanese. I said, that's the kind of things you have to study. You got to study, your enemy, and not only just figure out his order of battle and things like that. You got to study their culture and their attitudes and those things. So I was just, following on to your comment there that, Yeah, we do a very poor job in that. I mean, going into these different places in the world, and we have no idea what these people are like.
Yeah, I guess in the Marine Corps' defense, the timeline was pretty short, and we just got off the CACs. I think we left within a week after coming back on a CAC. So we there wasn't much work. There was no workup. You know, fortunately, we had done some mine training just before, and we also thought we didn't know what peacekeeping. The Marine Corps is not a, you know, we didn't know peacekeeping wasn't really in our vocabulary, and so we thought we were going to go help people. But you know, I was in an engineer support battalion, so you know, thought we were going to be building things, and we did eventually. But yeah, I had no idea that I'd be working with with 1st Combat Engineer Battalion, and be clear in minds that we had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Were you did you stay in the Marine Corps long after you returned from Somalia?
Yeah, it was long enough to get to actually be a company commander. So another year, I had another year left, I think. But I only served 4 years.
Okay. And I'll just, you know, I don't want to belabor this too much, but when you came home, did you talk to your family about the experience, or, you know, your parents or friends back home, or did anybody ask you about it?
You know, as a more famous Marine colonel said, they couldn't I don't think they could handle the truth. It just didn't have, again, what I've gone through is nothing compared to most of these people you've had on this program. So, but it did impact me, but I didn't see much reason to say a whole lot. We dodged a bullet.
Is there a character in the book that you identify with the most? I mean, I know that you track the young, you know, cadet who's taken and trained up. Is he the one that he's you in a sense, or there's a lot of you in him?
A lot of people ask that. Yeah, the response I often give is, yeah, the main character in the first book, Duyal, is everything I thought I was, but really failed to be. So if I relate to one character, it's probably in the 3rd book. There's a chap named Leander. He's a crusader gone to the Mamluk side, and you know, his cohorts are Duyal and Singer, and I make it pretty clear that Leander feels like he's you know, lucky to be in their company, and he's the, and I want to say he's the weak link, because he's a you know, he speaks 4 or 5 different languages, and he's on a reconnaissance mission. But if I relate to anybody, it's probably him, knowing that the competence is relative when it comes to everything. And yeah, I learned that from my Kiwi friends.
Sean, you could unmute.
Sorry. This is more of an aesthetic question. Could you bring back up the pictures of the books, please? I used to work at Barnes & Noble for quite a long time when I was a young struggling actor. And something that always captured my eye when I'd be, you know, shelving books and different things is the covers. And I was always interested as to how the author was able to find a particular cover that would draw the eye, because this is also a very difficult section in you know, to get someone's attention in the bookstore. But these are very catching. So I didn't know if maybe you could talk a bit about how the art was decided.
It's actually pretty cool. Like I'll use the 3rd book as an example. You know, if you give, you know, if you basically tell an artist that you want, you know, a mounted archer, it's going to become cartoony. It's not going to be authentic to the time period. So I found, you know, all the armor that the horse is wearing is from a museum piece, a picture that I took. Same with the armor he's wearing. That bow, I just had to switch out the shape of the bow, you know, 2 different times. Even the quiver on his side, you know, all that stuff that's a Mongol warrior, and everything he's wearing is to the period legit. So basically, the kind of the cool thing is it's a team thing where Mike Sager is my publisher. He has a Japanese layout artist lady who has a certain skill set, but she did the most that she could do, combining the pieces together. And then she has friends from Russia. And so and these guys do video games and other kind of graphical things. They kind of used what Siori, the Japanese lady, and I put together. And then they put the, the whole thing together. And so it's kind of cool where you don't know nothing. You start to realize that, nobody does anything alone. I mean, it's a team, it's teamwork for sure.
Love it. Love it. You have a wonderful story about how you started to write these. I mean, you said you're not a writer, you're a businessman, and you're interested in this culture. The easy thing to do would be to read about it. It's a whole other kettle of fish to begin to write about it. Ken Kazak will be interested in this story. Can you share the story about how you suggested this, one of your favorite authors, Stephen Pressfield, that you wanted him to write a story about this culture?
You're asking me the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's I've shared it quite a bit, I guess, but the story anyways, but yeah, Steve Pressfield is a former Marine turned writer. He was a Vietnam era guy, and he's a great dude, period. And long story short, I was mostly a nonfiction history guy as far as a reader, and I started reading on these Mamluks. And I just wrote him a note. One day I wrote him a note after I'd read a bunch of his books, and it's like, hey, and he wrote me back right away, which surprised me. But long story short, I gave him this topic, the interaction between the Mamluks and the Mongols, and this sort of this underdog story, and it's just almost the irony that these young boys that were enslaved by the Mongols would later come back and stop the Mongols in the Middle East. I just told him, hey, you need to write this story, and he was like, no, man, you need to write it. And I'm like, yeah, why don't? That'd be great if I knew anything about writing. And so that's, I just slowly, I don't pretend to be that skilled. I just started working, taking the steps to learn how to be a writer, and then started researching. Before you knew it, here I am, I guess.
I love it. So he said, why don't you write that damn book,
Exactly.
Brad? Yeah,
Exactly.
You write that damn book, which is really great advice. Ken Kazak.
Todd, when I was reading the clips from Stephen Pressman there, that sang to me, Brad. I hear that all the time. I tell people that if you're going to write something, you got to devote at least 2 4-hour periods a week. That's your creative time. You got to start reading. You got to sit down with your pen and your pad and come up with ideas. And that's the time to work. Most people can't do that. They shy away from that. And somehow they expect that they're going to turn on a computer and pages are going to come out of a printer and they're going to have a book or a screenplay. But I'm glad that you introduced me to Stephen Pressman. But Todd, if you don't mind, may I ask Brad, like when did you start? When did you get the idea to do the first novel?
I mean, I didn't really have the idea to do it until he turned the tables on me. I mean, I guess that's the honest truth. And I was like, and I'm just dumb enough. That's what Steve Pressfield had told me. He's like, I told him I'd started writing it. He's like, yeah, you're too dumb to know how hard this is. So keep going. I was like, I was like, he's just kidding. I was like, no, man, he wasn't kidding.
And you can see this is Stephen Pressfield. Go to StephenPressfield.com. He is he writes historical fiction. I think his probably most famous work is The Legend of Bagger Vance, which was made into a movie. Mm-hmm. Gates of Fire here is a story of Spartans and Thermopylae, the Battle of Thermopylae, and it's a West Point reading list. Highly recommend him. And he does a lot of nonfiction too, especially he likes to write about the writing process and to be kind of a coach for writers. So check it out, StephenPressfield.com. Has he read your books, Brad? His philosophy is he doesn't read any fiction, at least so he says, because he doesn't want to poison his own voice. Yep. So, and you know what, if I wrote like him, I wouldn't want to read my stuff and poison his voice either, There are a lot of fiction writers who absolutely agree. They only, especially if you write historical fiction, they only read history. They do not read other historical fiction. So I have no doubt that that's true. Do we have any other questions here for Brad Graft? This is what a wide-ranging, fascinating conversation this is. And I knew it would be, because Marines are always interesting. Literate Marines are the most interesting people. Ryan.
thanks for sharing everything today, Brad. And I was just wondering, are you working on any other projects, right now?
Yeah, I think I've got one more Mamluk book in me probably. So sort of in its infancy. The story, the actual history is it's just too cool. There's too much left not to give it a go.
Is there anything else you're kind of like aspiring to, or like another section of history that you're like, oh, that seems really interesting, maybe not like actively working on it, but something you would kind of like to do?
Yeah, I'm just gonna probably just do one at a time, but maybe, yeah, I don't know for sure, but I'm gonna keep writing. It's gotten in my blood now, I guess.
And I'll let people know that Brad is a businessman and a successful businessman, and he doesn't write for his income. This is, although he earns income from the writing, you write what, like 3 or so hours a day in the morning, and then you get on to your regular job.
Right. Yeah, and probably, especially during the off season, we're kind of a seasonal business. During the off season, I'll write at least 6 hours, both weekend days, which is what you have to do.
Isn't that awesome? And I know that you give the proceeds from the book to veterans charities, especially those the charities that work with wounded veterans. Please do feel free to kind of pitch the charities that you support the most, and ones that you would recommend.
Yeah, we've been helping 3. One is Hope for the Warriors. I met their Shannon Maxwell was one of the founders. I had the opportunity to meet her at the Wounded Warrior Barracks in Camp Lejeune back in what year was that? 2006, I think it was. So kind of got to get a feel of what they did and how great of people they were, and so I've been helping them up for decades now. Tragedy assistant programs for survivors. TAPS is another one that our businesses, we do an annual fundraiser. We help them as well.
Great.
And Homes for Our Troops is the third. They, as the name implies, they'll remodel homes and build new homes a lot of times to accommodate wounded vets that were severely handicapped.
Okay, Homes for Our Troops. I'm going to call up that website so that people could, here it is, Homes for Our Troops, so that people could get in touch, learn more. Let me share the screen here. I did put the other website here in the chat. This is Homes for Our Troops. You could go to hfotusa.org, hfotusa.org, and we'll put this in the chat. And then TAPS, I am familiar with TAPS, and we'll share that also. Brad Washabaugh.
Yeah, I guess, first of all, I want to thank you, Brad, for being here this morning. It's been a great story, a fascinating reflection of your writing and your experiences. And I guess my question, as a reader, I'm mostly nonfiction, but making that jump over to the nonfiction reading, how do you, for somebody that's so used to just reading about the facts and how it's recorded, how do you get something from a nonfiction, a fictional historical story, and trying to separate what's really true and really isn't, and coming away with something that you learn from and you're impressed with without having to guess? Did that really happen, or is this half made up, or whatnot? From a reader's perspective, if you could comment on that. And thank you, Devil Dog, for being with us today.
No, thank you all for even having me. That's a great question. That's why I didn't read historical fiction either. It's like, how much is this guy just making up? Why do I want to think that it might be true and then be misled? And to prevent that, I didn't put any historical fact in that I hadn't researched. Even the moon phases, I was just really, probably obsessed is the right word, trying to make it as accurate as possible. All the weapons, the numbers of troops, everything, all the gear. And I think sort of the intent all along was, some folks don't want to, old Marines like to pick up history books, and the history itself will draw us in. But if we could get more people to read on a topic like this, it's obscure, by drawing them into a story as well, but has the historic, but the history is still tight, then I thought maybe that's a service that, that'll get more people reading about history, and especially in this era that most people have no idea.
Sean,
how do you make someone visualize that many troops? It's like, to think 200,000 or more. It's like, how do you sit somebody in that reality?
Yeah, you ask tough questions. Probably not as well as I should. In the third book, I've got three. Leander and a couple of his recon buddies are. They creep over the top of mountains and get to view. 100,000 troops, and each troop had 3 horses. What would it look like in a valley, seeing that many people, all their gear, all these horses, all the livestock it took to feed them? You just try to visualize it. I tell you another thing is I went on to Google Earth, and I found that, I found the valley I was writing about, and I'm just like, and you just try to go there. And that's, I know Pressfield, I learned a ton from Pressfield. I mean, he gives back in his nonfiction books, and a lot of it is when you just try to get into the zone. And I know when he's writing the first draft, where he's actually writing a story, he tries to, he'll come up to the kitchen and he's just like a zombie. Everyone will look at him like, are you there? So I think the idea, and to answer your question, you just try to put yourself there, and if you can see an image of what the ground looks like, that helps. And if you know what the gear looks like, and then it's just a matter of, how much talent you have to draw the picture.
Ken Kazak said earlier that writing is cathartic, and that's part of the process. I think is you put yourself, to do it well, you force yourself to put yourself into a situation that you've never been in, or that you wouldn't normally be in. But I would submit, Brad, that there's something really powerful that happens with you when you write that is somehow connected to that disillusioning experience you had in Somalia. I would guess that Ken is right, that there's a really important healing integration process that's going on when you're writing. That's what, because otherwise, not to be insulting to you, Brad, but it'd be completely insane to write.
I qualify there.
Yeah, because writing is so hard, it's so difficult, and you've got other things going on. You don't need to be doing this. You could be having fun doing other things, but there's real important work going on, and I think we all benefit from it because you're educating us, and but I imagine you benefit from it also.
There's the old cliche that I didn't find the work found me. The one thing that was interesting was and Pressfield actually he's written a couple books on his Jewish heritage and also the 73 war. It's called The Lion's Gate. And then he wrote a book called An American Jew, but he wasn't interested in it until he took a 23andMe DNA test, and I did the same. And probably the freakiest thing about all this is I'm 100% convinced that my kin generations back live there on this Volga River, so there's one section, and I'm not a genetics guy, but there's the 23rd chromosome you can trace back thousands of years, and I had already written the books, and when I read this, when I read the study, and it said, yeah, your kin are from the Eurasian steppe on these river valleys. I'm just like, and they moved, I'm a Polak, but a lot of the Kipchaks are now what are East Europeans, merging with those, a melting pot with those cultures that were there. So yeah, I'm sure there's some of that, because like you said, I'd rather read history books than write, because writing is miserable. And like you said, I'm not making any money at this.
No,
God, the covers. I'll never cover in revenue what I spend on the third cover.
No.
So
no.
Yeah,
Not
I don't
at
know.
all.
Yeah.
It's
And
something
the
that
other, I'm sorry, Todd.
no, go ahead. No, you go.
Yeah, and on the other side of my family, my mom's side, they were Volga Germans. I found out later as well. And my sweetheart her parents were also Volga Germans. Where during I guess it was during the turn of the century, a lot of Germans headed east onto the Volga River Valley and were beet farmers. And so I got both sides of my families on this Volga River where this book took place, and I had no idea that both sides of my family sort of had roots in different ways there. So I'm sure and I'm not sure I believe in ghosts, but I believe in the muse, and I'm sure mine's a dude with a recurved bow wearing horse armor, and he's kind of pulling me along.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to meet that guy in a dark alley at night.
Yeah, me neither.
Jeff Witherell, did you have your hand up, Jeff?
Well, I was just going back to when you went, Brad, where you're talking about the Mamluks and these people. And I was just reflecting on, being a soldier a long time, and it came down to, I think you have to be physically tough, but then that only takes you so far. I think going back to our original discussion, I said, I think the reason why, like the Western armies are very good armies because not only do they have mental toughness and physical toughness, but they have a moral toughness. And I think I wish Ben was still on here because he's a minister and he's into this a lot deeper than I am. But I think that, we look upon ourselves, at least in the United States, as we look as the good guys, and we're ready to go and we're ready to take care of the underdog. And those other attributes of physical toughness and say mental toughness only get you so far unless you have some kind of moral compass.
Yeah.
And I think that's the basis of our ethos in this country, where we have the integrity, the honesty, the personal courage, the loyalty. Those, we're the guys in the white hats, and that's how we feel. And I think when you get into the situation like you got into, you start to get a contradiction and say, wait a minute, what am I doing here? And I'm supposed to be helping these people, but then, I can't protect them like I should, or I'm not allowed. And the same thing like the Vietnam situation, that was a tough situation to be in. But I think we have to go back on our moral upbringing and those kind of things, our spiritualism. And that's just my thought.
Leo West, you have your hand up, Leo. Leo
Yeah.
is how you doing, Leo?
Oh, pretty good.
Good.
The idea that we don't have a warrior culture. Looking back at World War II, the people that went into World War II were products of the Depression. And I think that was something that maybe developed a warrior culture. The other thing that I'm thinking of is maybe COVID would be our way of getting a warrior culture again. And something that kind of makes it tough to live. And I think that was a very good point that you made. And so that's about it. That was my thoughts while you were talking about that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And I want to say, Leo, I want to be Leo when I grow up. Leo is a long retired social studies teacher, Army veteran. You're 90. How old are you, Leo? 91? 93. So active. I get a monthly newsletter that Leo puts together for social studies teachers. That is absolutely wonderful. It's beautifully written. It's interesting. It's edgy. Obviously you are a wonderful teacher, and I'm just so admiring of how active you still are, Leo, at age 93. But thank you for that remark. I don't want to end the program without having Ron Gianta talk about what's going on with the Veterans Benefits Administration. Ron is our retired Air Force veteran who now works at the VA, and he is a tireless advocate for veterans. And you're also somebody who's very much on top of what's going on at the VBA. So thanks for joining us, Ron.
Thank you, Todd. A couple of things. Number one, and right after I'm done with this meeting at 11 o'clock, I've got an appointment with a veteran and taking their very first claim. But we do what's called telebenefits. And this is where veterans, and I put it in the chat, they can call these phone numbers and make an appointment with the Butler VA Hospital. And I've had veterans from Coriopolis, from Mount Lebanon, come all the way up to the Butler VA Hospital to do an online session with me to file their VA claim. Okay. And we do this by appointment plus every other Friday, which this Friday is Telebenefits Day. Okay. But I'll do an appointment with a veteran anytime. Also, I put the Pittsburgh phone number there where veterans can call in to schedule a virtual appointment to file a claim. We got too many veterans out there that are not taking advantage of those benefits they qualify for. They think they can walk, talk, and get up in the morning, and they don't really need anything. But everybody deserves to be taken care of by the United States government because we've all sacrificed for our service. Number two, something I want to mention is, a lot of our former service members have had discharges that were like other than honorable, maybe through no fault of their own. And I remember dealing with a veteran who was a Vietnam vet, got a Bronze Star in Vietnam, came back from Vietnam and got into a fight and, a bar fight, and got put in jail. And the Army gave him a bad conduct discharge after he just did 18 months in Vietnam. Veterans can take and go to their service. They can go to their service component to the Assistant Secretary for Manpower Reserve Affairs and file what's called a character discharge claim. They can do, what they can do that. Also in the VA, if a veteran files for benefits and we find out that their discharge was other than honorable, like a general or then what we do is we actually do a character discharge claim to qualify the veteran for honorable for VA benefits, so that although they may not have had a great discharge from the military, we would actually look at their file, their history, and make a determination of the period that there was no issue and qualify them based on that service period. So there's a lot that has to do with discharges. And as a matter of fact, it's called the Board of Correction of Military Records for the military, a BCMR. And you can Google BCMR and get a lot of information. So if anybody knows a veteran who has a problem with their discharge other than complete dishonorable, okay, they should take a look at a BCMR to try to get things fixed for themselves. One of the last things I want to mention is, the Pennsylvania Department of Military and Veterans Affairs has a program for veterans who are wartime veterans, 100% disabled, and basically they can file for forgiveness of real estate taxes. That's huge because I review a lot of these for the Pennsylvania Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. And the veteran must be 100% permanent and total disabled. There's an income limitation of $95,279 a year that comes into play here in qualifying for real estate tax forgiveness. But I put in the chat also the website. That's www.dmva.pa.gov. That's the link to the Pennsylvania Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. And there's a lot of benefits out there for veterans. It's not a VA program. It's a Pennsylvania program. You got to be a Pennsylvania resident, okay, to qualify for this stuff. So that's basically what I have for today. I'd like to compliment Brad on this presentation. It was enlightening, and when we talk about the warrior ethos in the military, it's amazing how we try to develop that at basic training. It all depends on the drill instructor who's teaching the recruits. The ethos that's developed to those recruits on how they develop themselves as, or consider themselves as, warriors. And that's all I got.
Thank you so much, Ron. I know that Larry Guggens, who's the president of VBA 862, is on the phone with a veteran right now working with a problem. So I will pitch the VBA 862 TET Party, which is on Saturday, February 19th. It is a wonderful event that's held here in Western Pennsylvania at a place called the Fez in Aliquippa. And there's dancing, there's ceremony, there's a kind of a moving tribute to those in Beaver County who died in service. I'll be there. I'm hoping some others like Julia Parsons will be there. And so please do, if you're interested, you can just go to VVA862.org, VVA862.org. And Ryan All, you work with the Vet Center, the VA Vet Center. I just passed along your contact information to somebody, a Marine, who said that, you know, he could use a support group. And I couldn't think of anything. Do you think the VA Vet Center was probably a good, good thing to recommend?
For sure. Yeah, we do several groups every week, usually based on Arrow service, but we do them on a regular basis. We have started up in-person groups again, but we're still doing telework groups as well, which are really interesting. And we're starting a whole health group here at the Vet Center as well, which I'll be facilitating. So apologies in advance if you do decide to come to that, but it should be it's a cool new tool that the VA is using, whole health, which I think is very interesting. I've gone through the process several times myself. It is very helpful, and it's very sociable. So the Vet Center, great program, right? We're all primarily veterans here who help veterans, and we are VA employees. But we aren't part of the VA hospital. So everything that we do here is confidential to the Vet Center. And it's free. So there's no cost at all. And you don't even have to be enrolled in VA healthcare to come to the Vet Center. So, we love what we do here. We're always, open for new clients. We do have non-traditional hours. We can see people before they go to work. We can see people after they get home. We can see people over the phone or through VA video conferencing. It's just a really great program, and it's kind of one of the best kept secrets of the VA. And we have vet centers all over the country. So if you guys ever do need anything or have any VA questions in general, I can help out with that. If we don't do that here, I'll be happy to get you in touch with who does. And yeah, thank you. It's a super interesting story today. Brad, thank you very much for both your service and for writing. And I think that's just amazing that you donate these proceeds to veteran charities. That is so cool. And I just really enjoyed having the talk today. And I thank you for, sharing, some of those personal experiences too. I think that was really great of you. So thanks a lot for having me. I love the VBC, Veterans Breakfast Club, awesome stuff. Thanks, Todd. Thanks, everyone else. Thank
you, Ryan. Hey, if you want to get in touch with Brad or you want to learn more about his books, go to bradgraft.com, bradgraft.com. Here is the website. I think I put the website in the chat here. Please do follow up on this. Brad, you're a busy person. I'm so grateful that you devoted, an hour and a half to us, to sharing your own story, the story of your writing, the books that you've pour your heart and soul into. We're grateful, Brad.
Yeah, I'm grateful for what you're doing, Todd, and just I appreciate the interaction with all of you. It's been a good experience. I didn't really know what to expect, so hats off to you for what you're doing, and thanks for the service, hardcore service that a lot of people that are listening right now did. So appreciate it.
Great. Hey, welcome back anytime, Brad. Anytime you have a moment, which you rarely do, I'm sure. We do a VBC happy hour every 7 p.m. on Monday night. So we'll be here with Galen Peterson, West Point graduate, who's a tank platoon commander in Iraq. He'll be sharing his story. So I'll see you all Monday night. Have a happy Groundhog's Day, happy Candlemas, and take care. Stay warm, everybody. Stay safe. All right. Thank you, Brad.
Thanks, guys.